Vicious, deadly, and dangerous. Now these are just a few of the words that can be used to describe the late 1800s. Now between 1865 and 1895, it was a time when the West was growing, and with that, it kind of became wild. Gold, silver, and copper were discovered in those hills, and travelers, both good and bad, from all over, wanted a chance. A chance for a better life, better pay, and better prospects, sometimes at whatever the cost. Now, people tried to live honest and good lives, they did, but the idea of fortune can change a person. Greed, lust, and deception were just as much a danger as wild snakes, heat, and even malnutrition. Life was hard, but people prevailed. Now, having grown up near one of the most famous, notorious Western locations, Tombstone, Arizona, as a child, the significance of the history didn't really weigh on me as it does today. The Wild West and the countless tales of robbery, family grievances, and turmoil are a constant personal fascination of that era for me. And this is why anytime a video game is released that has some semblance of Western tales, I take notice. There have been a number of them, few and far between over the last 30 years, sometimes feeling like an eternity before another is released. Games going as far back as simpler times, Sunset Riders or Lethal Enforcers 2, to other more recent takes on the genre like Call of Juarez franchise or Gun. I've found reasons to love most of these games for their take on the genre. Yet one game started my first foray into it. The first Western game I ever played was Capcom's very own Gunsmoke, which ironically ties in directly to my favorite Western game series of all time, Red Dead. Capcom released Gunsmoke back in 1985 in arcades and later in '89 on the Nintendo Entertainment System. It has no connection with the TV show, although they have the same name and theme. Playing as a bounty hunter, you travel upwards in a linear scrolling fashion, shooting your way through towns, outposts, and other Western-themed locations in order to finally confront the leader of the gangs and to defeat them all. Taking them all out would eventually result in saving the town. And it was a fun game, one I played countless times over and over again. I'm not even sure I was even able to finish it at the ripe old age of 5, but I'll tell you what, I sure tried. Years later, sometime around 2002, Capcom was looking at taking another stab into the Western genre. I even recall seeing screenshots of something called Red Dead Revolver back then, and waiting patiently for its release. Sadly, it was cancelled indefinitely. Rockstar had purchased Angel Studios, the company developing the game underneath Capcom, and in turn later turned into Rockstar San Diego, which caused the cancellation. Yet there was a glimmer of hope when Rockstar decided to buy the rights for the cancelled game, and they decided to give it a spaghetti western feel and increase the gore and action even further, pushing the boundaries, as most Rockstar games tend to do. And finally, in 2004, Red Dead Revolver released, and with it came a Western game unlike any. Featuring multiple playable characters and a story involving greed and revenge, it was a fantastic Western game, if even a bit dated by today's standards. It featured classic locations typical of the theme, a stiff but workable cover system, and something called dead aim mode that let players slow down time, aim, and fire, emptying all rounds into an unlucky bad guy. And what a rush it was. Gun duels even played out like classic movies with close-up shots of each person before the inevitable quick draw, leaving one man standing and the other 6 feet under. Its quality and atmosphere stood out more than any other game set in this time period for me. Yes, it had been through development hell, and in some ways it does show, but at the end of the day, it had surprised lots of players and come out better than most had probably expected or anticipated. There was even a hub-based area that allowed visiting various shops in a small town for upgrades and extras. It was an open world, but it feels as if Red Dead Revolver was definitely a step towards the creation of their next game. so it's no surprise Rockstar got to working on their next cowboy project soon after, which we would years later learn was called Red Dead Redemption. So how do you take the concept of the Wild West gameplay from Red Dead Revolver and improve upon it, when they had already nailed so much of it right? The dead aim system, the quick draws, and the Old West visual style? Great aspects to the game. Well, Rockstar's biggest claim to fame had always been their open world franchise, GTA, which seemed like the proper avenue to pursue for a living, breathing Western experience. Instead of having players force themselves through linear levels, how about creating an entire southwestern landscape to roam, fight, and even hunt in? Well, it was apparent, and the writing was on the wall. Red Dead Redemption almost seemed destined to be turned into an open world game. It was practically begging for it. Red Dead Redemption launched in 2010, only 2 years after GTA 4, and with critical acclaim from various review outlets. Rockstar brought forth not only a compelling and extremely well-made game, but one that happened to showcase in detail one man's story, not only about himself, but his family, which ultimately correlates to its title name. Deciding to showcase the decline of the American frontier as society pushed more mannerisms and newer technology, 1911 might have been a period of time when the Wild West was dying. But for the main character John Marston, it was a period of change, reflection, and indeed, redemption. And without this character, the experience would have probably been a little bit lessened. There are a few core aspects that really impacted me, making this the best possible Western experience in gaming today. John Marston is one of those reasons.
I have a son. I had a daughter, but she died. Years before that, I rode in a gang. We robbed banks, trains, held people ransom. We killed people we didn't like. Bill Williamson was in that gang. Now, if I don't capture my former brother in arms, great harm will befall my family.
John Marston has done terrible things. And to quote him, "Ain't no secret, I didn't get these scars falling over in church." He is a man of many convictions and he knows it. And players don't know at the start exactly what sort of character they're playing as, but over time, the depth and the layers of Mr. Marston become apparent and start to become stripped away. A man running from the past, only being forced to confront it once more to see his wife and son. It's the ultimate story of a man with a bad history who knows what's most important to him, his family. He'll do anything and everything to get them back, including going after his old gang members. John is the epitome of a bad guy turned good, but he still knows the evils he's committed, and he isn't afraid to jump back into that path if necessary. The lines are a bit gray with Marston, and it's why it makes playing as him, experiencing his story, one that hits so strongly with moral dilemma nagging at the back of my head. Players want to root for him, but yet he isn't really such a good guy, and only during this time frame is he trying to right all his wrongs. Who knows what other monstrosities he's committed, people killed in cold blood, prior to the events in Redemption. I constantly felt like John Marston was a good man myself, or at least had it in him to do good. But he hasn't, nor ever will he be, a saint. In a time when the land was just as dangerous as some of the people living on it, bringing the West to life in Red Dead Redemption, Rockstar chose to include a variety of locations in New Austin. From the Tall Pines Forest, the rolling grasslands, and a taste of Mexico. Each location brings with it a sense of open land feel and atmosphere to each area. While it might seem a bit overzealous to include so many unique locations, it's not far-fetched to understand that a change in elevation can vastly affect the type of plants and animal life that can be seen. Even in the southern part of Arizona I'm from, a 30-minute drive can take me from a rolling hills wine country, weeded out boonies, or a beautiful mountain range with green trees everywhere. Of course, some believability can be overlooked as this is a video game, but the land they created for John Marston to explore, using these various settings, both large and beautiful, and lifelike, helped create an experience that resonates with players and myself. And even today, 7 years later, Red Dead Redemption offers some of the most striking vistas and lifelike, real-time, night and day transitions I have ever seen in a video game. And I've seen many a pink sunsets in my life, and Red Dead Redemption absolutely nailed this little detail. Now, these details also add up to liven the world that inspired them, from wood-breaking physics, NPC characters stopping to piss, drunkenness, or a gang of cowboys riding through town, dragging along their latest victim. 'Cause in the West, anything goes. The combat features a wide variety of rifles, revolvers, and shotguns, with each packing an appropriate punch. John Marston will use these different gun types as he goes after Dutch's gang and other problem starters around the environment. Remember earlier when I talked about Red Dead Revolver and its mechanics? It's apparent that the team decided to retain the cover system and dead aim from the original game, with improvements to both. Combat feels more responsive and punchier. The cover system is much more intuitive, with John running from cover to cover, even sliding into hiding. The way gunfights transpire and combat occurs leads to expected, if not cliched, results. From a duel that could have John shooting a gun out of a cowboy's hand, or the way bullets impact or leave holes in their victims with violent display. All this backed by an advanced physics engine. It'll see enemies toppling to the ground, bent over, falling over railings, or being dragged behind on the ropes as the body reacts to the punishment. It's never pre-scripted and only adds more of a sense of realism to a game already filled with impressive detail. Now, all the elements I've discussed go a long way to help shape this game into a fantastic Western experience, if you couldn't already tell. But yet another important element that really helped push Red Dead Redemption even further, to sell it even more, and to help with it becoming one of the best games ever made, lies within the soundtrack. Composed by Bill Elm and Woody Jackson over the course of the development, these tracks resonate and give weight to various moments in the game, leaving players with memories of intense gunfights and story element beats. Also, who can forget the ride into Mexico featuring Jose Gonzalez's Far Away? One of the best moments in gaming, and the soundtrack absolutely sold this breathtaking moment.
Just to feel alive again.
Rockstar took the Red Dead name and spurned it into a classic franchise with Redemption, an open-world game that embraced the West, a changing world, and the aftermath of one action in a world that doesn't forget. It brought with it so many memorable moments, featuring a great cast, varied missions, and a story that still culminates to one of the most remembered endings in video games of all time. With Red Dead Redemption 2 announced for the fall of 2017, Rockstar Games has a legacy to uphold. There is of course room for improvement 7 years later, not only in visuals but with perhaps a bit more depth in gameplay, new ideas, and of course a brand new story. And as fans, we all have questions. Will it be a prequel, a sequel, or just another iteration of open world Wild West, presented in classic Rockstar glory? Now we simply wait for more to be revealed as we get closer to release. And as I sit here and ponder about what the possibilities might bring from a new entry, I think I'll take another quiet drive down to Tombstone once more, soak in the sun, and remember the life that countless folks endured during this time and the hardships that transpired. While it may be a time period I absolutely love to play and explore in with little consequences, it's best to reflect on how life really was back then, a time that came with a heavy price for many, all in the name of fortune, glory, and in some cases, simply keeping your family together.
Upon a dead man's gun, and you're looking down the sights. Your heart is worn and the seams are torn, and they've given you a reason to fight. And you're not gonna take what they've got to give, and you're not gonna